They're getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Puzzling new developments tonight in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie.
Is this possibly a break in the case? There was a SWAT raid, which I was actually at. They went into a neighborhood about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's house. That inside Nancy Guthrie's house, they located DNA that does not belong to Nancy Guthrie and does not belong to anyone associated with Nancy Guthrie, okay? So a stranger's DNA located in the house.
Friday night, Tucson. The kind of quiet that sits wrong when you know what's underneath it. 2 armored SWAT vehicles rolled into a residential neighborhood just after dark. Roughly 24 deputies moving with the kind of deliberate calm that only comes when you've rehearsed the operation more than once. A house. A traffic stop. A Culver's restaurant less than a mile away. 3 people pulled from both locations within minutes of each other, and sources confirming what the timing already suggested. None of it was coincidental. A man and a woman came out of the house. No resistance. No confrontation. Just 2 people stepping out into the wet night air while deputies moved in around them. Simultaneously, at that restaurant nearby, a 3rd person was stopped mid-traffic, mid-meal, mid-whatever they thought their evening was going to be. Sources indicate it may be a mother and son from the house, a brother from the stop. A family unit, detained together, connected to a single investigation. The investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. She is 84 years old. She has been missing since the night of January 31st, vanishing from inside her own home with no confirmed sighting since. And on the same day that SWAT trucks were rolling through that neighborhood 2 miles from her front door, the sheriff's office released something that changed the entire shape of what investigators are dealing with. Stranger DNA. Found inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Not hers. Not her family's. Not anyone tied to the house through regular contact. No landscapers, no pool maintenance workers, no Uber drivers, no known associates. Every person with a legitimate reason to have been inside that home has been tested. Every one of them has been eliminated. What remains is biological material from someone who had no legitimate reason to be there. An unknown person inside the home of an 84-year-old woman on or around the night she disappeared. That is not a lead. That is a thread directly connecting an unidentified individual to the scene of whatever happened inside that house. The reporter who broke this on the ground, Brian Enton, was actually inside the police perimeter before it was fully established that night. He and his cameraman had arrived at the staging area early enough to watch the operation unfold from within it. He watched the man and woman leave the house calmly. He watched more and more FBI vehicles arrive as the evening stretched on. And he noted something specific. This felt different in scale than what had happened days earlier down near Rio Rico, close to the Mexican border, where a similar operation had brought in a man named Carlos, executed a search warrant, and ultimately released him without connection to the case. That outcome deflated everyone. But what unfolded this particular Friday night carried more federal weight. More resources. More agents. A full evidence response unit preparing to work through until morning. If DNA samples were collected from those 3 individuals during the operation, comparison against the stranger DNA from Nancy's home could come back within days. The FBI lab can move fast when the intelligence supports urgency. And the intelligence here has been building. There is also a layer beneath the investigation itself that has become impossible to ignore. The relationship between the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. Rick Castigar spent 40 years at the Sheriff's Department. He was the former undersheriff, one of the most senior people in the building. And he is now publicly calling out the current sheriff's decisions around this case. The issue is where the evidence is going. The sheriff's office has been routing physical evidence to a private laboratory in Florida rather than to the FBI lab at Quantico. The sheriff's stated reasoning is consistency. Some evidence went to Florida early, so everything continued there. Castigar's explanation is something else entirely. He calls it one word: territoriality. According to Castigar, the tension between the sheriff and the FBI traces back to roughly 2016, when federal agents investigated some of the sheriff's subordinates for mishandling RICO funds. The sheriff was not a target in that investigation, but he was left out of the loop while it was happening, and he did not take that quietly. Castigar says the sheriff made his feelings about the FBI known repeatedly to senior staff during that period, and that personal friction may have shaped decisions that directly affected this case. The clearest example involves the surveillance footage from Nancy Guthrie's front door camera. When the case was still being handled primarily at the local level, the sheriff's department reportedly concluded that recovering any video from that camera wasn't possible. The camera had no active subscription. There was no footage to pull. Then the FBI got involved. They determined the footage was recoverable. Google had retained it on cloud servers despite the lapsed subscription. That video became the only known image of someone at Nancy's front door around the time of her disappearance. Without federal involvement, that image likely never surfaces. President Trump also commented on this directly, stating that the sheriff hadn't wanted to give up the case, and that's the reason the FBI still isn't fully in charge. A 40-year department veteran, the president, and an entire community watching, all saying the same thing from different angles. The neighborhood around Nancy's home sits in near total darkness at night. A local ordinance designed to protect stargazing means no street lighting. The vegetation is thick enough between properties that someone could move through the desert without being visible from the road. Even after 2 weeks embedded in the area, Enton still uses GPS to navigate out each night because the winding roads and cul-de-sacs disorient even in daylight. That detail is not background color. It means something. The person who entered Nancy Guthrie's home and left without triggering a single visible camera almost certainly knew that neighborhood. The dark spots, the gaps, the exits, the roads that look like they connect but don't. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from driving past once. It comes from familiarity. If the stranger DNA doesn't return a match in Cody's, the FBI's national database, the next step is genetic genealogy, the same method that identified Brian Kohberger in the Idaho quadruple homicide case. In that case, a DNA sample from a knife sheath was run through commercial genealogy databases. A match to a distant relative gave investigators a starting point. They built a family tree from that point outward until one person's age, location, and behavior aligned with everything else. The same process is available here. A third or fourth cousin match is enough to start narrowing a field. And biological evidence, unlike behavioral profiles and circumstantial timelines, does not degrade. It does not get reinterpreted. It simply waits. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. 84 years old. A mother. And somewhere in a lab right now, the stranger DNA collected from inside her home is waiting to be placed beside whatever was collected from 3 people detained 2 miles away on a rainy Friday night in Tucson. That comparison may take days. It may take longer. But for the first time, this investigation has something it didn't have before, a direct biological link between an unknown person and the inside of that house. Not circumstantial, not behavioral, biological. If you have any information, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips@fbi.gov. The reward currently stands above $1.2 million. Every update in this case has changed what we thought we knew. This one may change more than most.